What's up, everyone? It's your boy, The Business, coming back at you live for episode 39 of The Business. Let's be real. Tonight's special guest is Andy Gallatin. And lucky enough, the wife and I were able to meet Andy probably about 15 years ago. We were all working at the same resort together. Andy was in control of recreations. He was the fun guy that was able to, he was taking care of the pool and taking care of all the beach activities and making sure that everybody that came there had a great time. And came across Ashley and I back before children, and we were able to all hang out and had such a cool time. Got to really know each other, had a lot of things in common. We were, two guys who knew the Ohio Valley very well, had a special bond there, and loved sports, loved reality TV. We used to watch Big Brother together and laugh and joke and, talk about the show, and just, it was such a cool time at that time. And Andy's gone on to do a number of other things. Before we met Andy, Andy had walked the Appalachian Trail already, and it was such a cool story. And we got to hear so many different stories from throughout that trip. And I'm gonna have him bring those to you live, and then kind of just give a whole rundown of his life and talk about all the things he's done. Before then, after that, he made a 3,000 plus mile kayak trip down the Ohio, Mississippi, all the way to the Gulf, all the way down to the Keys. I mean, we're going to talk about all this and let him really elaborate in the story of all the different places he's been, all the things he's done, and kind of talk about where he's at now and what he's looking to do in the future, because it's a super cool story, and the story just continues from here on out. So with that being said, The Business, Let's Be Real, episode 39 begins now. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to The Business, Let's Be Real, with special guest Andy Gallatin. Andy, how you doing tonight, man?
Doing great, Tony. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you. Good to see you. I appreciate you taking some time out. I know your busy schedule. I know you're always busy. I know I caught you on a down couple of weeks where you're actually back visiting the parents and stuff, and you were able to come on and tell the story, man. I appreciate it, dude.
Oh, anything for you and Ash, I'll do.
I know. I'm like, you're one of ours, dude, and you know that. Like, we've always been tight.
I'm your firstborn. That's what we always say. One for y'all. I wouldn't have ate when I was in my 20s.
That's true, right? I mean, you were one of us. You were around every day. We hung out, watched sports, chilled, did our thing. Look at the wife he's popping into and just say, hey, Andy. The firstborn, she's laughing about it. Too funny. We joke about that all the time. Like it was like after that time period we always talked about Andy, and I always brought him up, and I always check in with him, and he always checks in with me, and it's so cool because we're gonna get to all those bits of throughout the travels, even on the kayak trip when I came and I met you out at the end of Anna Maria Island, and we had lunch that day, and you were telling me the story about what you were doing and why you were doing it, and so proud of you at the time. Still so proud, man.
That's the cool thing about our relationship, where we can be miles apart and not talk for a while, but pick up right then. That's true friendship right there.
Yeah, man. That's the truth. All right, dude. So, I mean, if you don't mind, I kind of want to get into your story and just kind of, all the places you've been, all the things you've been through. But we're going to start from the beginning. As far as I know that, when you were first born, your parents were living in Cincinnati at the time, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And then soon after you were born, though, you guys made a move into Tennessee, into Johnson City. Can you kind of talk about, I guess, what it was like then for you? Because I know you don't remember the Ohio time, but I know you remember growing up in Johnson City. Can you talk about what it was like growing up in Tennessee at that time?
Yeah, it's Johnson City's up in like the northeast corner, so right in the foothills of the Appalachians. And I know it's not what you would say, but just typical childhood, two parents, one brother, and moved there when I was a year old. I took like 2 steps and then we moved to Tennessee. But Johnson City is it's a great place to grow up. Smaller, mid-sized town, I'd say. There's enough trouble to get into, but not too much. It's pretty neat. There's all the elementary schools and one high school. So it's like one middle school, one high school. So you go to your own elementary schools and then you're thrown into it. So all different walks of life, you get to know it. So it's a great melting pot for pretty much the world. And so, but played sports in high school, sports growing up, sports in high school, wrestled, ran cross country, track, pretty much standard stuff when I was growing up.
Can you talk about because I know you played all those sports. I know you wrestled. I know you were a letterman in wrestling and cross country, and you went to state in both. Can you talk about not only what those experiences were like, but like kind of how those sports impacted your life?
Yeah, no, for sure. So I was really small growing up, always one of the smallest people in the class. My freshman year, I wrestled 103, which is smallest weight class. And that's what I liked about wrestling. I talked to my dad. My dad's from Northeastern Ohio, up by you, where wrestling's everything. Tennessee, it's not as much, but he dragged me and I'm like, wait, this guy doesn't have to wrestle the big guy. And I was used to wrestling my brother and kids in the neighborhood. And I'm like, I can get down with this. So it was nice that you got to wrestle people your own size. So that was like a big thing for me. And it was great. I like it because it's the individual sport, scored as a team, where if you win, then you won. If you lost, you lost. I could play baseball and hit 5 home runs in a game and we still lose. And for me at that time, I was like, this is crazy. That makes no sense to me, But if you hit 5 home runs and you lose, you're mad. But if you lose in wrestling, it's like that guy was either just better than you or you did something and ended up on your back. So it's that kind of stuff where for me, always kind of just, I'd rather rely on myself than other people. That's where I was growing up and through a long time. So that's what those sports kind of pushed me to do, that where it's like, if you want something, you're going to get it yourself.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I'm a big wrestling person. Love wrestling, love what it was able to teach me. Both in and off the mat, it was like being on there. I enjoyed it because it was something that was, like you said, it was a singles sport, but also combined into a team sport. And how well you did. Also, it did matter kind of for your team, but you couldn't blame it on anyone but yourself, kind of in a way. If you didn't do well, you didn't prepare properly, either mentally or physically, whatever the case may be. But no, I mean, I love wrestling. I love baseball too, and I know you played all those sports as well growing up. You and I were huge football fans. I love football. I grew up playing football, and that was fun too. But it is what it is, kind of thing. Can you talk about, like, I guess, somewhat like how those sports kind of stuck with you though throughout your life? Like, what were some of the things that you were able to take away from sports?
Yeah. So growing up, I mean, I was always the one that had the most energy. I'm still a high energy person. But for me, I started running cross country to get in shape for track. I started running my junior, senior year just so I could get in shape so I could do it. But it's the self-discipline, I think, where it's, you kind of put your mind to it. Like, I never once wrestling missed weight. That was like one of the big things for me. If I had to cut 5 pounds, 10 pounds in a week, I could do it. If I had to cut 5 pounds overnight, I could do it. If you pay me $1 million to cut 5 pounds right now, we'll see. Maybe that didn't stick with me on that part, but no, it's one of those, it's, if I'm wanting to put my mind to it, and I think that's the biggest thing, it's believing in myself and really focusing on something, and that drive. I think those are the big things that the sports really taught me is, if you want something, you got to work for it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Let's see, cross country. Okay, well then, with school, like, were you kind of? I know that you were in like homecoming court and you were vice president of your senior class? Like, I guess
That vice president, I
yeah.
did it. It's pretty funny because I didn't do the president because I knew presidents had to do the homecoming reunions, like the 10-year, the 20-year reunion. And I was like, that's not going to happen. And there was a good parking spot that the president and the vice president got right up in front of the gym. So I was like, that's really what I want to go after. I mean, that was the ulterior motive, but it was also, I always liked doing that, helping out, being someone kind of people could look up to a little bit. And,
that's cool.
It's high school politics. You're not getting too much really accomplished, but it does teach you a little bit of, the give and take that you see in the politics now,
Sure. And I guess then after school, you ended up making your way to Springfield to go to Wittenberg. Yep. Can you talk about, I guess, kind of what went into the decisions? Because I know your legacy at Wittenberg. Can you talk about that and talk about, what were your, deciding factors to continue that tradition?
Yeah, both my parents went there. That's kind of where they met. And then my brother, who was a senior when I was a freshman, he went there as well. He played football there all 4 years. And I would always go up and visit him. And I knew I wanted a small school, so I was familiar with the school. I wanted a small school because if I went to a large school, I'd just get lost. Was never the greatest student. So I got diagnosed in 4th grade with dyslexia. So it was my learning disability, and it was just a different style. But I was familiar with the campus. I liked the small school environment. And that's probably one of the best decisions I ever made. Some of the best friends I ever got came out of there.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And I remember, I mean, soon after, we met soon after you got out of Wittenberg, probably within a year or two later, after you had made the hike on the Appalachian, then you were fresh out of Wittenberg, made the hike, and then had taught, and then came to the colony soon after that. Like within 6 months of that, I think you were at the colony. We used to talk about Wittenberg and how much you enjoyed it there. And I guess, can you kind of go into detail about the Wittenberg experience, like your 4+ years that you put in there? Like you talked about how you went there. You had a lot of fun there, but I don't know. I guess talk about that experience.
I went there my freshman year. I had a great time. They say you learn more outside the classroom than inside. And I took that kind of for real. My mom hates when I say that, but no, I definitely like to party and stuff like that. School, like I said, was never easy for me, but it was one of those, I started meeting a lot of different people. I don't want to say it became really popular, but a lot of my friends kept calling me like the mayor there because I just knew everyone. That's kind of how I ran things. It's like, someone over here. I had a good time going to the parties. I could go to the football parties. I could go to the theater parties. I could go to all the different fraternity or sorority parties. It's like I knew people all over the place, and I'd kind of bounce around, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed I don't want to say like a big fish in a small pond where you get to know everybody.
Sure.
And you can, if you went to Ohio State or something, you'll know just a small group of people. And I'd rather know everybody a little bit than go to a school where you only know a couple people. And so for me, that's what it was. I became a communication major. And once I found out they had a communication, I was like, wow, you get paid to just like talk. But no, it was a little more than that. So I had one professor that told me, he's like, I've never seen someone who can work a room as well as you, but so god awful at taking tests and writing papers. But it was one, the studying part wasn't for me, but the professors, that's what's great about those small schools. Those professors will work with you. I'd do bad on an essay and one professor would be like, come in afterwards and talk to me, and we'd talk it out and I'd get all the answers right. And he'd give me a little extra credit for that. Yeah. And that's one of the things that also drew me there was the small school that worked out well. But
I got some comments popping in. I'm just gonna pop them up. Sam Tate popped in saying, Andy,
that's your Ocala boy right there.
And then Mark Dunbeck pops in. He's like, Andy, your beard game is strong. It is strong. Look at that thing. It's always on crisp, dude.
Oh,
Thank you, Sam and Mark. Thank you guys for popping in, man, putting some comments. We appreciate it. Yeah, I guess I was kind of at that part where I saw you had gotten in with the sports information department and were also helping coach the women's lacrosse team. I would suppose that this was now later in your tenure there at Wittenberg. Can you talk about those experiences a little more?
Yeah, so I had known, Wittenberg and the sports have always been a huge part in my family. Everyone in my family played sports. I ran cross country there. My brother played football. My mom was a cheerleader. My dad was a diver. And so kind of knew all them. And so I did an internship with the sports information department. And then, so basically what I would do is I would go to different games, do the scoring. So, like basketball, we had a great basketball team at the time. It was pretty tough, back and forth. You're calling out assists and points and everything. Go to the women's lacrosse games or women's field hockey, and you'd get the scores at the end of the night and then write a blurb, post those up on the website. So got to learn a little bit of coding and stuff like that. And then the women's lacrosse, I had the coach was a friend of ours, and this was my 5th year there. And she was like, I need a student assistant. And I was like, they don't have lacrosse in Tennessee. I don't know anything about it. And she said, people and sports. So, and lacrosse is a lot of it. It's just the cuts, you're making like in basketball.
Sure.
It was interesting. That was a really great experience for me because I found out the difference between men's sport and women's sports, where men's sports, if you have a problem, it's like, let's fight each other, punch each other in the face, and we're done.
Sure.
Women's sports, it's like you got to talk it out and stuff. And that's helped me throughout my career, difference in genders and stuff like that. But it was really an awesome experience getting to be part of that as well.
No, that's so cool. That's so cool to get there. You were doing sports information, which is huge. You were getting into all the games, getting prime seats, I'm sure.
Press box. You got food up there, pizza every time.
It's like
it's life. Going back to sitting in the stands kind of was tough for me,
Yeah, I know, definitely. I get it. So after Wittenberg, you graduate out with your bachelor's in communication. You said, is that what you said earlier?
Yeah, it's communication.
Okay.
Most people put an S on the end. Professors will get after you right then because it's not like telecommunications. It's more how people communicate. So like nonverbal communication, just intercultural communication.
Yeah. Like
just a wide like how people interact and stuff.
Sure. Okay. And then Sarah's popping in now. She's like, not only is Andy the best guy, he's also the best skier.
We ain't even gonna get into my skiing. As long as you can't upload a video, then we're good.
Appreciate you, Sarah, man. Sam popped back in. He's like, so am I famous now? Sam, this is just the early years of my podcast. This is just the first year of the podcast. So, I can't say famous yet. And luckily, Andy's a family friend of mine, so I was able to get him on the early shows. Where it goes from here, I have no idea, but you're always famous, bro. Thank you, Sammy. I guess now let's talk about the aftermath of Wittenberg. Before you decide to go, I guess, get into the professional field, you make a decision. Can you talk about what were some of the deciding factors on what made you think to try to hike the trail when you did? Yeah.
So when my freshman year of college, I had this professor who came in, and you always hear about these cool college professors, and you come from high school teachers, and he had us do, instead of a research project, it was called an iSearch, where you had to like research doing something yourself. And this guy was really cool, Dr. McClellan. He was originally at Florida State and then came to us, so it was a pretty cool thing. And he I was going to do it on backpacking or on camping. I was like, I'm just going to do it on camping. This will be a quick, easy A, you know? And he's like, well, dig a little deeper. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to do it on backpacking. He's like, dig a little deeper. So I did it on the Appalachian Trail. And then, you know, finally graduated. And when I graduated, I don't know where I was in my head. I was like, I feel like I need to accomplish something, you know, before I go out in the real world and stuff, which at that time, it tells you kind of where I'm at. You know, some people don't even graduate college. And in my mind, it's like I have these expectations for myself. So I decided, I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And I remember telling my parents, and I was like, nervous. You know, I just did an extra year of college. And then I'm like, hey, I'm going to go walk around the woods for 6 months. And they've always been supportive. They were like, go do it now. Because once you start working, you'll never get 6 months off the rest of your life.
That's true. You'll be an old man by the time that comes around again, buddy.
Yeah, and it's one I've met so many people that say, "Oh, I want to do that someday. I want to do that someday," and it's one I had the luxury to get out there and do it. So I remember I went home. I did some traveling around the United States, and then went home and I got a job working for Citigroup, handling Home Depot credit card accounts, and that was interesting. Commercial accounts, you know, dealing with their credit cards, and the construction workers call you at 7 a.m. saying that, you know, why isn't their card working? It's like, well, you got a $10,000 limit and you know $15,000. Like, you get called every name in the book.
Oh,
but
yeah.
one of those, I did that for a little bit, knowing that I wanted to go do this, and then I'd be able to get out there and start my career. So I decided April 1st, 2006 is when I was going to start doing that. So I went out and started hiking.
I'm at that part too where you're at April 1st. Now you made the trip, you hiked down, and I know a lot of people have done it in parts and pieces, and you and I talked about that, you know, back when you were telling me the stories about when you walked the trail. You were like, Tony, you have no idea how many people they'll come and they'll, you know, do it, and they'll walk, you know, 400 miles and then they'll leave and they'll come back 2 years later and try to walk another 200, and you know what I mean, and people part and piece it throughout their lives, and I think that's super cool too, you know what I mean. And I think that some people, you know, who would love to do something like that should try to do it like that. You were lucky enough to make it, you know, 5+ months, almost 6 to be exact, to where, you know, can you, I guess, talk about, if you don't mind, some of the more memorable moments that you have throughout that time? I'm gonna put you solo screen here because this is, I know, a part of the show where you're gonna roll for a little bit, and I'm good with that. Like, don't hold back on certain stories. I know you can, you know what I mean, talk with the best of them and really elaborate into these stories and get us all into that Appalachian Trail trip, because I think that people really want to hear this part.
Okay. Yeah, no, so my, like as Tony said, it was just shy of 6 months. So from door to door, from the time I left Tennessee till I got back to Tennessee, was right at 6 months. Started down in Georgia. My parents dropped me off, and it was crazy, you know, just, hey, Mom, Dad, see you later. I'm going to go walk across the country. But it's pretty neat because you basically break it up into short hikes of 3 days, 2 days, 4 days, whatever you want to do. And you carry everything on your back. You get to a road crossing. You start hitchhiking. You go into town. You come back out, get more foods. And it's a really awesome experience. It's one where if you look at the whole trail, you're not going to ever be able to complete it. Like Tony said, some people do it in little sections, but you basically break it up into sections. There's no way, if you're like, am I going to make it to Maine? You won't make it. If you're like, I just need to make it from Georgia to North Carolina, then you can make it. It's like, all right, if we get from North Carolina, get to Tennessee, and just take it state by state. Some of the crazy stories are when you get to those hitchhiking. I know I was in North Carolina, got picked up by a hitchhiker going into town to get more food, and noticed the guy was a little crazy looking, you know, had some high heels on. It was pretty interesting. But, you know, he's super nice, and then got caught in a pretty bad, it wasn't snowstorm. I started April 1st because I didn't want to get caught in the snow, but it was a pretty bad ice storm. So I was pretty cold, didn't have a whole lot of cold weather gear. And then after you get out of North Carolina and Tennessee, it was really great getting back to my parents' house in Tennessee. I was able to take a day off and then hike through the area that kind of spawned my love for the Appalachian Trail. And then after that, got into Virginia. Virginia is one of the toughest parts, not physically, but mentally. The trail is about 2,000, it's a little over 2,000 miles. 500 of those miles are in North Carolina. So it's one of those that, when you first start, a couple days, you hit North Carolina, then you hit Tennessee, you're following the Tennessee-North Carolina border. It's the small little rewards you get. And then you get into Virginia about 3 weeks in, the novelty of hiking is pretty much worn off. And you're like, oh, what am I going to do today? Just wake up and hike. Okay, here we go. And you just hike. And then it's pretty neat because you go through a lot of national forests, national parks. Once you hit West Virginia, after Virginia, that's a huge milestone because you've completed almost half the trail. When you get to Harper's Ferry, West Virginia, that was a neat time. I hit that on my birthday. And I remember Harper's Ferry is considered the halfway point, and I'm like, did it, made it halfway, but now I got halfway to go. So it was a pretty interesting time. And we went out and hit the bars and met these two ladies who we didn't know, and they just took us and said, oh, we'll give you a ride, and took us to some other place. And it was one of those, you don't know where you're going. You got to kind of trust people. And we survived, but it was, I think I ended up in Maryland. I'm not sure, but it was one of those, it was a pretty crazy time. Then you get back and you hit the trail and you just keep going. So let's see what other crazy ones going up. It was pretty neat seeing up on a mountain in New Jersey. I was able to see the skyline of New York City. That was a pretty awesome thing. One thing people are always really interested is I saw one bear the entire time. Everyone else I know saw thousands of bears. It became a huge joke, and that bear was in a dumpster in New Jersey. So if you think you're going to see him in the Smoky Mountains National Park in Tennessee, nope. If you're going to see him in Shenandoah National Park in Virginia, nope. It was in a dumpster in New Jersey. So that was pretty interesting. But then head up through New Jersey all the way up to New York, going to Connecticut. And one of the really things that I like to tell people is when I was in New Jersey is probably the only time I ever wanted to quit. And there was a spot where there was just thousands of mosquitoes, and I was slapping them and hitting 5 or 6. And I got it. I always say if I had an easy button, I would have quit right then. Never wanted to quit any other time. But I got to the road crossing and was hitchhiking in, and this lady picked me up. And the best way I can describe her was a soccer mom. She was driving a BMW SUV, picked me up, and it was like, if she hadn't picked me up, I was in bad shape. And I hopped in the car and she gave me a ride, and I look in the back seat and she had twin little babies back there. And I was surprised that someone would pick me up, and it's one that just blew my mind. I was like, why, ma'am, I appreciate this ride, but why would you pick me up? You don't know me. Like, I mean, I come from a good family, have a college degree, everything. And she's like, you needed a ride. And it's the small interactions where you meet different people that for me really made it all worth it, because you realize there are still good people in the country. As crazy as the world's got now, it was still like that back then. It's still like that now. But, once you go up and you go through Connecticut, Massachusetts, head up to Vermont. Or I remember when you get to Vermont, I'd never been to Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it. And I went up Vermont, New Hampshire. Maine was just beautiful. I remember sleeping at night here next to this pond, and I heard water, and I shined my headlight and saw just an eyeball way high. And it was a giant moose right by my campsite drinking water. But kept going, finally got up to the end in September 22nd, 2006. The last mountain is Mount Katahdin. If you ever seen a picture, you'll see people standing on top of the mountain. There's a sign up there. That's pretty much why you do the whole thing, is just for the photo and the self-gratification. But the photo is what everyone wants. And got up there. I was actually had the whole mountain to myself for about 20 minutes. It was just one of the most amazing experiences. I was yelling, crying. It was freezing cold. There was ice on the ground. And I was just waiting for someone to come take my picture pretty much. But it was just one of those surreal moments where I was like, I finished, I did what I said I was going to do. There's a lot of people that said I wouldn't do it. I have family and some friends who were like, oh, you'll make it the whole way. And for me, it was like knowing to have those supporters, but also a lot of people who didn't believe in me. I was like, see, I told you I'd do it, and got done. And then people came up, took my picture, and I was like, all right, let me go down and get dry and get out of here. So, but it was also the joy of completing it, but also the fear of what do I do now? This is what I've poured everything, all my thoughts, everything into it for 6 months. And now here we are back at this again. So I went down, caught a bus to Boston, hung out with some friends, and then was able to fly home, get back to Tennessee. And then it was figure out my next steps right there. So then I decided I was tired of walking up and down hills. So I was like, let me move to Florida.
Oh man. You talked about how you made the trip, and it stretched across 14 states, and you walked 2,000 plus miles, and it took you almost 5 full months to do so. Can you talk about, I guess, you brought up one challenging moment. Can you talk about maybe some more challenging moments that kind of could have discouraged you, but like you said, you continued on?
Yeah, there weren't, it sounds bad, but there weren't too many. I think it's just my mindset where it's like there weren't too many moments where it would just start raining. It rained for about a month straight, and that wears on you. But it's like I said, I did that job for a while, and I knew what it was like sitting in an office, and I was like, this is so much better than sitting in an office, like, and for me, it's like, this is what I wanted. I wanted to do it. Before I did the Appalachian Trail, the previous year, I'd went out and did a 10-day trip by myself. I was like, let me see how this is going to go. And it was one, I had a terrible hammock I was sleeping in. I got at Walmart, and it rained on me. My water pump broke. I drank out of the river or out of the stream. I ended up getting giardia, which is like drinking the water of Mexico, and everything that could have gone wrong, or everything that could have gone wrong, did go wrong. And when I got done, I looked back, I was like, that was pretty fun. It's the type 2 fun that I was like, I enjoy doing stuff like this. So I think for me, it was one that, the pushing myself and knowing that, almost feeling like I had to prove something to somebody. I don't know if that goes back to where I was in my head at the time, where it's like, I graduated college and I'm like, oh, I want to prove something else, So I think that kind of pushed past the, anything that would go wrong. Like, it would rain and it's kind of let it roll off you, pun intended, It's like, it's going to rain, but tomorrow it's going to not rain and it's going to be better. So,
yeah.
The uphills stink, but then if you go uphill, you're going to have to come downhill at some point. So
That's true. No, that's awesome. I mean, I'm glad you were able to come out here and share that story of the trail and what it was like hiking. It's cool that you talked about doing it, 10 days prior, the year before. That kind of mentally prepared you and knew that you needed to truly prepare yourself for a longer hike if that's what you were going to do. Because, some people kind of go into it blind and, they think that they can make it easy, and sometimes it's not so easy. And that's, it's super cool that you were able to do that and experience that. And like I said, I appreciate you coming on and kind of sharing those experiences, man.
And that's one of the things for me, what I always tell people, they're like, oh, I'm going to go do it. I've been training, there's all sorts of different training techniques where you can get your backpack and fill it with jugs of water so that it adds weight, and you practice, you're hiking 10 miles, 15 miles a day, you're trying to do these different things. But for me, I always tell people there's not a single thing you can do to get in shape to be walking all day, every day. So for me, it was like, I broke it into quarters, where the first quarter, till I got to like Virginia or so, I didn't do over, 15 miles a day. I would just take it easy. Even if I was feeling good, I was like, don't push yourself, because you'll just destroy your body and you get shin splints and stuff. And then that second section up to like the halfway point, I was cranking it. I was just back in full mode, doing 25, almost 30 miles a day. And then the second section kind of the same way. And then when I got to that last part, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, I'm like, I'm about at the end. Let me slow this down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then kind of enjoyed it then. But it's one that people go out and it's like anything. You're all excited. You want to jump into it. Like, let me go. And if you do that, in my personal opinion, you're going to destroy your body. You know, it's like, you got to just ease into it. You know, if you want to lift 500 pounds and you go out and you start lifting it, you're going to throw your back out. If you ease your way into it, then you'll be able to do it.
That's true. No, man, that's cool. That's cool, man. Awesome time. Awesome to be able to hear that experience for you. Super cool, like I said, that you were able to come on and talk about it. I guess now let's jump to the aftermath of the Appalachian Trail. You talked about what transpired somewhat in the aftermath. You kind of alluded to the move to Florida soon after, and you made it to the world-renowned Colony Beach and Tennis Resort on Longboat Key. Can you talk about, I guess, I don't know if you had family out here or if you were looking at jobs out here, like, hey, what, you know what I mean? Like, can you talk about what led you to Florida then at that point?
Yeah. So I was looking at, I was like, all right, I want to try to do something outdoors. You know, I enjoy doing this. I knew hospitality would be good for me. Just kind of how I've always had a person, I can talk to people, stuff like that. So I was going to go to Key West. It was like Key West or Colorado. And then I was like, I don't feel like walking up and down hills. Like I said, you know, doing the Appalachian Trail, it's the same as the elevation change. You're only doing 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 at a time. But it's the same as hiking from sea level to the top of Everest like 16 times, 17 times. So I was pretty much tired of walking up and down hills. So I was like, I'm going to go Key West. I'm going to get a job driving those little trolleys or something like that, you know. And then I looked up I was looking for apartments down there. And I was like, oh, a studio apartment's like $2,000 back then. I was like, I can't afford to live down there. So I had a good family friend who lived in Bradenton. And he was like, hey, he was heading overseas. He's like, I got a house sitting empty. Why don't you come here? So I had to, Google Bradenton, Florida, because I had no idea where it was. And I was like, I guess this will work. So I went down there and bounced around. I went out to Longboat Key. I went to the Hilton out there and applied for a front desk job. And they said, you don't have any front desk experience. You know, it's the typical thing where I'm like, well, how am I going to get experience if we don't give me a job? And then somehow I made it down to the Colony. I was trying to apply for the front desk, and they're like, you might be better at this job, basically the cabana boy. And I was like, well, I guess that'll work. So got a job down on the beach. So I was basically handing out towels, cleaning the pool deck, cleaning the beach. And they said, oh, man, you could probably work in the kids club too. So was doing both that, and it was about 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks is when the guy Mike before me was like, he pulled me aside, was like, hey, I'm leaving, but he's like, pretty much the reason I hired you would be, I think it would be good to take over my job. So went straight in and then started doing the recreation part, and it was a great job. I mean, I basically played with kids and played on the beach all day. Got to watch you when you were still the banquet captain, sweating in pants and long sleeves.
Setting up for the 4th of July and stuff. Oh my God.
Setting up tables and then serving food over a hot stove. And I'm out there. I'm like, oh, Tony, I got to go do a sailboat lesson, which I know nothing about sailing, but I knew some.
You made it look good. Yeah, you made it look good. Like, come on, I'm gonna teach you.
Yeah, but it's like being the recreation manager. I'd go into those managers meetings and I'd like basically get in trouble because I'd be tracking sand in there, you know. So, but it was my first kind of real job. I think first kind of management position. It was a great experience, you know. I mean, love that.
Such a cool place, man. Such a cool place, right? Like,
Yeah.
I talk about that all the time. You know that, like, we talk about those experiences. I know, people hated on the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort, but the people who worked there, they put in their time there. They enjoyed it. They loved that place. Lots of respect for that place.
Oh yeah.
You know, and what it brought to a lot of us, because I mean, you know, you like we talk about, we have a friendship that has lasted 15 plus years because of that meeting at the Colony Beach and Tennis Resort, man.
Yeah, and that's like what I said. You know, when I first came down to Florida, I couldn't get a job in a hotel, and they gave me a shot, and then worked my way up, and then after that, when I moved back up to Ohio, I got hired on by Marriott real quick because I had hotel experience.
Yeah.
Like it was a great starting point for a lot of us. It's just one of those things that it was awesome too, because there was that whole group of us that weren't the executive committee and weren't the outwardly.
We were like middle management. Yeah,
middle management. It's like,
we were like that literal term of middle management. We were a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds that they didn't want to have in control of anything like that, but they wanted us because they knew we were hard workers. They were like, you guys are all hard workers, so we're gonna get a whole crew of good young professionals that are trying to come up in the business. And they had that.
It gave me a good stepping point. I mean, look where you are, look where Ash is now. I mean, it's one that if we hadn't had that, and if we hadn't been pushed by those people, they knew what they were doing. It's like somebody probably did that to them, and then look where they got. So
yeah,
bad to say about them,
Yeah, no. I appreciate all those people, man. I appreciate them all. I still see Don Haggerty. I talked to Katie Klauber a couple of times since that interaction there at the Colony, and she still, I still send her a happy birthday every year, and she does the same for me every year, and it's a mutual respect of somebody that we kind of feared when we were younger because she was the big dog, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And now it's a mutual respect between two people who have been around and have done that, and she knows that, so it's cool. And that was a cool experience, man. I mean, I guess after that, you talked about coming back to Ohio and joining in with the Marriott group, and getting back into Dublin. I know you got into Flanagan's too at that time, and you kind of always stayed with Flanagan's throughout, doing your thing in hospitality, plus the Marriott situation, which was also in hospitality, but in a different platform. One was food and beverage, the other was, the hotel side of things. Can you talk about, I guess, those first years after leaving Florida and heading back to Ohio?
Yeah, so I left Florida and I came back to Ohio. It was one, I had you guys as my close personal friends down there, but I also didn't have I was working all the time. I think it's the working all the time, not having that much time off, not knowing a whole lot down there. And so I literally went on Facebook back in the early days, and I looked and see what city I had the most people in. It was Columbus. And my brother was up in Columbus. He had a condo. So I was like, I'm going to Columbus. So went to Columbus and got a job working at Flanagan's. It's a bar with 14 sand volleyball courts. And I was like, man, this is a nice transition for me, from the beach to sand volleyball courts. So I would start it off just plowing the fields and then bar back and bartending, stuff like that. And it was great getting back up there. And then, it's just a summer kind of gig. And then got in with Marriott and started working my way up from a front desk to doing housekeeping, and then moving over to I did front desk and then ran the housekeeping. And my whole plan was to kind of, eventually become an AGM of a hotel, like a Residence Inn or a Courtyard or something like that. And at that time I was like, man, I was on about 5 more years, and I'm like, this isn't gonna, I don't know if I could put the 5 years in to get what I thought I was going to be making. So it's kind of left there. And then I always had the bar to fall back on. I could go pick up shifts, and it was great. And then I did trucking logistics for a little while. And that was that's right now, if you're doing that, you're probably making some serious money. But for me, I was good about yelling at the drivers, like, you need to be here. But when they're like, I couldn't lie to them. That's my problem. Be like, oh yeah, get there at 8 o'clock to unload you, knowing that they're not going to be there till 1. That just wasn't a good fit for me. So left there, went back, still was working at the bar. And then one of my buddies had been trying to get me to get into sales for a while. And I went and started working for Quest Software, which turned into Dell Software. And that's, I mean, all of them, I consider that like my first big kid job, you know. I mean, that's one, you know, they're giving me quotas of $1 million quotas, $5 million quotas. You know, it's a feast or famine in that kind of sales industry. So I started doing that for a while.
I have it to where you did the logistics. You were talking about the trucking, the broker logistics, and then you talked about Dell and support renewal specialist. And then soon after that, I guess is when things kind of somewhat changed for you, and you were looking to then go, I guess, on a different path, and that's kind of what made you make some choices to change your life.
Yeah, for me, like, you know, I mean, you and I used to party together. For me, I realized my addiction started taking over for me hardcore. That's what I realized. I mean, when we were down there, you know, we were partying, we were young, and then it's like, you know, you guys married, you guys move on, start having kids. I'm still doing those same things, you know, and it's not just Friday night, Saturday night. You know, I start seeing all my friends doing other things, and the consequences with DUI is like, you know, health, just not, my life wasn't where I wanted it to be. And I remember I was fighting the DUI down in Florida, or down in North Carolina, and they found the one in Florida. And I was like, my lawyer was like, you need to, if they find your other ones, you're going to be in some serious trouble. And something came over me, and I was like, man, I can't keep doing this, you know? So I went to a rehab center down in Tennessee called Cornerstone of Recovery. Awesome place. They had a place in Ohio, but basically I was like, all right, I need to make a change. And I remember I called my parents and told them, and I was like, I got to do something. And, you know, my parents are awesome. They were about this close, you know, they just want to call and find a place and take me there. And I mean, I hadn't lived at home in 10 years, so they had no idea how bad I was, you know, and stuff.
Sure.
So, but I was like, this is something I got to do. So I found a place, and probably like one of the hardest parts was, you know, I was ready just to quit my job and go do it. And, you know, then afterwards figure my life out. And my brother and my mom were the ones that were like, you got insurance right now. Let them take care of this for you. You know, so I was like, all right. So I had to go in. I tried to find HR's number, and I couldn't get an HR person. So I had to go into the vice president of global sales, support sales, and tell him, I'm like, Jeff, I got a problem, you know? And it's like, this guy's that Katie Clobber down there, you know, he's with Dell, and he's a big shot. And I'm like, I got a problem. I need help. And he was like, I got you. So he's like, I'm going to have to tell one or two people, but I'll get everything taken care of. And he got me some phone numbers and everything. And so I ended up going on like leave and went down and did a 30-day in program. So I had to do like 5 days detoxing, you know, and it was I remember for me, it was like I had 2 weeks before I left. So I got rid of my apartment, and I made my little bucket list of all the things I wanted to do before I had to go to rehab. You know, I never had a Moscow Mule. I was like, I gotta get me a Moscow Mule before I get down there. And I remember getting it, and it was in like a glass cup. It wasn't even one of those cool copper cup. Like, I thought it was gonna be this cool thing. You know, I had to go out to the river and have a couple beers, and it just, everything I wanted to do wasn't. The fun was over for me. You know,
sure, yeah.
So down and went, and it was June 10th, 2015. I packed everything up, and then my mom drove me down, you know, nothing greater than like, hey, I'm 30 some years old, take me down here. But, you know, they always supported me. And so I did a 30-day inpatient program after like 5 days of detoxing. And I remember after I did my detox, they told me, they were like, hey, insurance isn't going to cover this. And they're like, and I was like, well, what do we do? I started crying because I knew how much pain and suffering and everything I had been through that I had to get there. And it was I was like, I can't leave this place. Like, if I leave, I'm not going to ever come back to a treatment center, you know. And it wasn't about the trouble I'd get in with the courts. It was about what was going to happen to me. Like, you know, I was like, turn out well for me. And so, I called my parents. They're like, we'll get this taken care of. And they basically told me, they're like, if you had like jumped off a bridge a couple days earlier, we might be able to do something for you. And I was like, I did jump off a bridge. It was just into water because it was fun, like it was all these things that I just was like, you got to keep me here. And so they set up a payment plan with me. My parents helped out, I basically got to stay, and it's what saved my life. And so I did that for 30 days. And then I had to do 60 days of sober living and like outpatient stuff. And then it was an integration process. After all that, then I was able to come back and head back to work. And that was one that I was like nervous about, when I was getting out. Then it's like, they always say you learn all this stuff in jail, and then when you get out, like you're released back into society. It's like if you don't do all this right, you're not going to survive. And so I had to do everything. I had to start going to meetings and do all the stuff that was requested or suggested of me, and I did it. And that's why I was able to stay sober to this day. It's one that my brother and sister-in-law took me into their house, let me sleep in their basement, and had a safe place to live rather than going back to my own. Cause it's like anywhere I drive around Columbus, it's like a trigger for me. Cause I'm like, oh, there's that bar, there's that bar I used to go to, it's like one that everywhere, if I drive down High Street, there's tons of bars, and I didn't even go to Ohio State, but I've been in them all. So,
shout out to your brother Matt too, man. Super cool dude. Like your parents are awesome. Like,
oh yeah,
like, so cool.
I had that great support system, but I was able to go back to work, and it was crazy when I went back to Dell. I just started crushing it. I was doing really good. I remember one time my boss was like, "Man, you're doing great. What can we suggest to everyone else that you're doing that might help them?" I was like, "Well, tell them to quit drinking and partying."
Quit partying so much.
But I don't think they're going to listen to you.
Yeah, good luck with that.
But it was one that, I made that decision to really flip my life around, and it's the best decision I've ever made. It's given me everything I have now.
Awesome, dude. I appreciate you, man. So cool, dude. I guess after rehab, you kind of get out. You're still working for Dell at the time, and then you have somewhat of an epiphany, I guess, to start a new foundation. Can you talk about what was the brainchild to the foundation and why you looked to start it?
Yeah. So for me, I was working for Dell, and like to go back a little bit, when I finished the Appalachian Trail and I was like, what's next? I was like, I want to do a canoe trip. I wanted to canoe down the Mississippi River. And it was like one that I was like, because I can carry a cooler, I can take so much beer with me. This is going to be great. And that was always the next step for me.
I'm going to put you solo screen on this.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to go ahead because I know you're going to roll.
Yeah. So that was the big, I wanted to, do this. And then I never could do it because something would always pop up, whether I'd get arrested or, jobs, relationships, stuff like that. So I ended up, when I finally got done, I was like working for Dell, and I was like, this is good, but I've gotten sober. I'm just not happy doing this. This is not where I want my life to go. Everything that always held me back from doing that canoe trip wasn't a problem anymore. So I was like, all right, I'm going to be figured in April 2017. I was going to put in my notice at the end of the quarter. And then they started doing this. We got bought back out. And so they were doing some layoffs. And I made it very clear that if they were doing layoffs, to hook this guy up. And I was like, all right. So I got laid off. They called me in, and boss was fumbling his words. And I was like, is that how much money I'm getting? He's like, yep. And I was like, do you need me to sign something? So I got a severance package, was able to get done a couple months early. And so I was like, I got this big kayak trip. And for my resume, I didn't want to have too many gaps on it. And before, I was always like, wish I could start a nonprofit for something. And my really good friend, Dixie Brown, who went to college with her, she's the person I went to when I got sober. She owns a treatment center, North Carolina, working with a lot of other ones in Boston, New York, Maine, all over. Dr. Dixie, sorry. But she knows her stuff in recovery and has always been a close personal friend of mine. I reached out, I've stayed in contact with her, and she told me she was starting a nonprofit, and we were like, hey, let's go together and create this thing. We use my kayak trip as the jump off point for it. So we were able to do that. And I knew I wanted to do this big kayak trip. So we teamed up and we said we're going to do 3,000 miles to help people recover from alcohol and addiction to drugs. And for me, that moment down in Tennessee when they told me my insurance wouldn't cover me, I can't imagine how many other people have gone through that and didn't have a supporting family to take care of them. So they went out and probably never made it back or struggled for a lot longer. So we decided to try to help as many people as we could. So the Sarah Foundation was the Sarah Fund then. Now it's the foundation was created. We were able to help raise about $25,000 through my trip. And that was kind of the goal, because that's what it costs for one person to go through treatment fully. We were able to divvy it up in, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but about 10 different states we help people, send people to treatment, and a lot of sober living. So giving people safe places to stay, detoxing, all sorts of stuff. So that was kind of what we built right off the bat. It's still going now. We are kind of shifting gears to kind of push towards more of a brick and mortar, supporting people when they get out of treatment. But it's something that's very near and dear to my heart, because if I didn't have that family and my treatment center support, then I wouldn't even be here. So it's one that we created this foundation to hopefully help out people, and it's been doing good so far. It doesn't always work with addiction. It never always works. But as long as you keep trying, it helps me, helps them, helps us all. But that's what kind of kicked it off for me. And then, yeah.
I kind of want to get into the kayak trip and kind of what that tour then entail, because I know you, like you said, you were planning on 3,000 miles. You covered 14, I think, states, or 13 states at the time. You raised over 20,000 plus in that trip. Can you just talk about that trip, I guess, now in particular, about what the going through that trip meant to you, and some of the places that you were able to see and visit?
Yeah. So originally I wanted to go, my last name's Gallatin, so I wanted to go from the Gallatin River to the Gulf of Mexico. So like I said, the Appalachian Trail was a big thing for me. The Mississippi River is what I really wanted to do. But in my mind, that addict mind, give me more, give me more. I was like, what can I do to make that longer? And the Missouri River is actually longer than the Mississippi River, and it flows down and St. Louis at the big arch. But I saw some people were connecting the Missouri River and the Mississippi River, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool. And then the Gallatin River is one of the three that makes up the Missouri, and Gallatin, my last name, after my sixth great grandfather. I was like, that's just a sign, So I was like, I'm going to do the Gallatin, Missouri, Mississippi down to the Gulf. That'll be a really good trip. I could do that, raise money. And I actually couldn't figure out the logistics on it. I had everything. That would be my big goal, but I was on probation still. And so whenever I wanted to leave the state, even though I had been my probation officer, since I got arrested in North Carolina, they transferred it to Ohio. So I went from probation to a parole officer. And when I went in there, she hadn't seen anything like me. It's like, I'm downtown Columbus, Ohio, this mountain man with a beard coming in, like doing everything I'm supposed to. I'm going to meetings 7, 8, 9 times a week, sometimes 2 a day. And, she's asking, I remember one time she's like, are you still doing those AAU things? And I'm like, you talking about basketball? Like, are you talking about AA meetings? And I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it. Like, she had way bigger fish in her hands than mine. Yeah. I'd get in and she's in a bulletproof vest because she just had to take somebody back to jail for parole.
Yeah.
So I couldn't get it figured out because I could only leave the state for 30 days at a time. And then I'd have to come back and get a new travel permit. And so she actually set me up with her boss and started seeing everything I was doing. It's like they saw that I was actually doing something really good. And so they ended up giving me 45 days, but I still couldn't it wouldn't have given me any way to make it to Montana and then come back. So I was like one of those. I remember I was sitting in Ohio, in Columbus, and there was a day where every ambulance in the town got dispatched because there was a halfway house or a sober house that there's like 6 overdoses in the house at that one time. And it's when fentanyl started becoming a big thing. And I'm like,
Wow.
this is not good. So for me, I was like, I got the time, I got the money, I got the resources. I just need to go. I need to go do something. And so I told my brother, I was like, hey, will you drop me off downtown Columbus tomorrow with my kayak? And I'm just going to go. I didn't know where I was going to go, but he dropped me off. I think he was excited because he got my truck for a long time, but he dropped me off and I just started paddling, and I went down to Scioto to Cincinnati, and then I came back and I got a new travel permit, or I got a travel permit because I was finally leaving Ohio, and just went down, through Cincinnati. It was pretty cool. You're going down, you got these big barges coming by, you got Riverfront Stadium, you got Bengals, Reds right there, and just kept going down the Ohio. And there's a bunch of locks on the Ohio River, so it's almost like you're going down a paddle across a lake, but you have to pull into these giant locks where you pull up, you call up to them, they open the big gate, you paddle in, they close the gate, the water drops down, opens the next one. A lot of people think it's like Jurassic Park, I think it's like prison, where one door opens, you go in, it closes.
They lock you in from behind and they let you into the next chamber.
Not everyone gets a reference. If you say Jurassic Park,
I like you're fading out on me. It is such a funny part of the story too.
But yeah, it was neat because for me, this trip is what I'd wanted to do for a long time, but that addiction held me down. And so, the Appalachian Trail, I was kind of trying to prove to everyone that I could do this. This trip was proving to myself that I could do it, but also to show other people that, it is possible once you get sober. Because I thought when I got sober, my life was over. Like, I can't go to high state games. Like, what am I supposed to do when I go to the beach if I can't drink? Like, if I can't park, life's just boring. But it's where I was at that time. It was like, how do I go Christmas shopping without partying? Like, I need to go to get groceries. I got to party a little before I go. So it was one that it was learning how to do everything over again. And I was able to do that. And I went down to Ohio, got to the confluence, went down to Memphis, all the way down to New Orleans, and then hung a left, went down and went around the Big Bend. When I got to Apalachicola, Florida, which is up in that panhandle, is when Hurricane Irma came through. And that was a pretty big storm. And I luckily started planning. I was like, I need to get out of here at some point to go get another travel permit. And I had to fly back. I had to find a place to store my boat. And got out of there right before the hurricane came. And it hit more down towards you guys than it did up in the panhandle. But once I got up there, it was I was trying to come back down, and Florida had closed off all travel permits for people on probation because they were dealing with cleanup. And so I couldn't get back down to Florida. And I'm like, is this trip over? So I ended up doing 300 more miles on the Ohio River. I went up to Steubenville, Ohio, and paddled down to Portsmouth. And it was one of those, I was just like sitting in this waiting pattern. And I'm like, I had about 2,000 miles at the time. And I'm like, is my trip over? Like, but it's just one of those rolling with the punches. Like I said, on the Appalachian Trail, it's like somebody had a plan for this, and I was able to get back down there. So I got back down, and that's when I made it the rest of the way around Florida. I got to Tampa and then paddled across the Tampa Bay. And that's when ran into you. It was nice going back down there, getting to see you up at it was interesting, those old stomping grounds where we used to hit on trolley bar crawls. Yeah. And I was able
That's where we used to start at, actually. We used to catch a bus ride all the way to the end of Anna Maria Island. And listen, it was such a cool time to be able to come out there and meet you, and we just sat around and had lunch and talked and took some pictures, and you know,
Yeah.
and just I enjoyed, I remember afterwards, Ashley being upset, like, man, I wish I could have got to see him. I feel so bad. Like, and I'm like, well, he's doing something right now. I'm like, but we know you'll be back again, and we'll, share those stories, and luckily, I mean, we're able to do that now.
I'll show up sometime. You just never know. Uh, but yeah, I got to go and I got to camp on Longboat Key. I stealth camped. I hid back in those woods there on Beer Camp, where that's one of the places where my addiction really started taking off. Like, what a lot of people don't know is, like, after you finish doing something like the Appalachian Trail or one of those big adventures, it's the greatest time of your life. And then you go back into society. It's documented all over the place. It's called trail depression or post-trip depression. It's the same thing as if you go on vacation to the beach, and it's like you come home and you're like sitting at the desk, you're like, man, I wish I was sipping a drink on the beach again. Those small little things, but it's like when you do 6 months and it's your whole life, you're eating, breathing it, then it's like a huge thing where it's like I got down there and it just, my depression and my addiction just started flailing, going crazy.
Yeah.
And so being able to be sober and make it all the way down there and camp on that spot where I used to go hang out by myself, it was like a really cool experience.
That's
and
awesome.
Then getting to paddle on down and going down to the Everglades, paddling all the way through the Everglades and then cutting across the Florida Bay down to the Keys. And I remember getting to Key West, and then my parents had drove down to pick me up, and it was neat. It was just a different type. And I knew when I finished that trip, it was like, all right, that trail depression I had the first time that really accelerated my addiction. It's like I didn't have to worry about that. I knew there was going to be some kind of worrying, but it was a chance to like start over,
Yeah.
And I got to do I just said, this is what do you want to do with your life? And that's where I just kind of made a decision to be happy instead of chasing that money and, grinding and stuff like that. So,
yeah. I know, man. We talked about it. You and I had a lot of nights where we sat around and we talked, about life and about our situations. And were we drinking a couple beers and shooting the shit? Yeah, we were. And I mean, that was just the way it was at that time. We were both young at that time. I think you were in your young 20s. I was in my real young 30s. Like I was just, I think, maybe 29, 30 years old at the time. Like I said, I mean, we had a fun time, and it was a cool time period of our lives that Ashley and I will never forget. And I mean, I know you're the same way. Like we had a great time at that time, but it needed to be left there at that time. And I think that you coming back around full circle in this trip, in this kayak trip, to do like what you said, to make a trip all the way back down and go through all these different places, and then settle in at Beer Can Island, where there was a peak of addiction there, you know what I'm saying? And you were living by yourself. Like, we made a joke of how you were talking about how you were probably the brokest person living on Longboat Key.
Person living on Longboat Key. I still claim that.
and we always laughed about that, but you were a young guy that was living on an island that was, I mean, a lot of rich folks on there, and then you just happened to be lucky enough to find somewhere to live on there. But yeah, I know that luckily you were a stone's throw away from where we were at on Anna Murray Island. You came over a lot. You would cut traffic with your little scooter and fly up the walkway and pass everybody and beep at me in the truck on the way by, like, me, I'll see you at your house, bro. I'll be over there waiting. And we were like, seriously, bro, I'll be there in like a half hour now because I'm stuck on the bridge. But no, it was such a great time, man. I appreciated it. Appreciate that. Like once again, you were able to come on and tell the story of what the kayak trip was and what it meant to you and why you did it, and the places you went to, and it's cool to talk about how you started off in Gallatin River. You know what I'm saying? And like why you did that. Like that's so cool, man. Totally appreciate that.
Yeah, it was one that life has. I have plans. They change. Same thing with my kayak trip. It changes. Things always change, but it's how you react. That's one thing. When I went back to work at Dell, I walked in. I remember I went back there and I was like nervous, like, you always think everybody's like whispering. Half people probably didn't even recognize I was gone.
Sure.
But it's in your mind. You think it's a bigger deal. And I remember I was getting coffee, and that VP who I talked to, he went walking by me and didn't say anything. And then when I came back, he was like, "Hey, you're back." He was like, "When you get a chance, whenever you want, come and talk to me." And we started talking. And it's one thing he had said to me. He goes, "Everyone out there on that sales floor has a problem. The difference is you're doing something about it, And It was, whether it's, people struggle with their weight, family situations, all that. But it's like, the difference is you're doing something about it. And it was like, to hear someone like that say something to me, like, it just blew me away,
Yeah.
And one that for me, I knew how hard it was to get to that point to actually make a change, but I was making a change, So that was huge for me.
Yeah, you were, man, and you still are to this day, because I know you still got the Sarah Foundation going. You guys are still raising money, and I'm going to get to that probably here in a little bit. Let you really shout out the foundation, shout out the River Weasels, and how they can see some of the things you've done and where you've been. I know the trail has a entry on you in your journal on how you walk the trail, and if you can talk about all that here in a few. You do got your boy Sam Tate popping back in. He's saying, "Is this video sponsored by Dr. Enough?" And I figure that's an inside thing.
Dr. Enough, City beverage. It's not alcohol, but it's delicious.
Appreciate you, Sam, man. I appreciate you. And I think that it's always cool that, like I said, what you've been able to accomplish up until that point of the journey of that kayak trip. Then after the kayak trip, you then joined the outdoor center of Natahala. And can you somewhat talk about that, like joining them? Because I know now you're doing the whitewater rafting, you're taking people on all those trips and kind of doing that thing. You are actually, I think now, what are you in charge of, kind of the whitewater rafting side of things there? Can you talk about that?
I'm not in charge, but so when I finished up, I 3,000 miles, 7.5 months in a boat, you got a lot of time to think about things. So I was like, what's the job that made me the happiest? What did I do that made me the happiest in life? And I was a raft guide back in college. It was the first job I ever got, really. And I was like, I always wanted to do it again, because it's raft guide. It's kind of a party lifestyle, but you're going out and you're rafting all day. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be outside. I like dealing with people. So I made a couple contacts of old people I knew and got in. And Nantahala Outdoor Center, the company I work for, I remember seeing them when I was working back in early 2000s, and I always compared them to like the 1980s Russian team, where they'd be coming down the river and they just had their people just hoo, and then we're coming down like the Beverly Hillbillies, like it was a different time. The banjo playing was coming from us, and I think back then when I started, like, we used to get like $5 extra if you didn't smoke in the physical boat with your people, like that's the kind of company I was working for. But it was awesome company back then. But I remember seeing them. I was like, this is a company that's professional, and it's like, I didn't want to be working for some non-professional. I have a lot of, the Colony, they talked about professionalism, Marriott, Dell, professionalism is one of my biggest things. And so, but I wanted to do something fun. So I started working for Nantahala Outdoor Center and started the Pigeon River and started working there, worked there for a year, and then started moving into one of the head guide roles. So it's do more the training aspects. So our new guides get to do the training. We all live and work in the same area. So I get to, anybody has problems there, get to help them out,
Yeah. That's kind of being in charge, being the head guy. That's cool, man.
I don't have to deal with the numbers or the money or stuff like that. So I leave that to other people. I don't have to sit at a desk. I get to sit in the back of a boat. And that's what I love. It's like I love sitting in a boat. We do 3 trips a day, 4 days a week. I get to meet all sorts of different people, it's great, because they're coming into Gatlinburg, Tennessee and the Smokies, and they come in and I'm like, where are you guys from? And if they say like Florida, I'm like, what part? And then they're like, oh, like south of Tampa. They say Tampa anywhere or south of Tampa, I start hitting them. I'm like, where? I'm like, Sarasota, Bradenton, Palmetto. And they're like, what? And then I tell them, youngest poorest person on Anna Maria Island. It's like, and I've lived all over. It's like I can talk to anybody, and I always, get to know people. And it's like I know somebody or I know something about your town probably. But it's just, you meet these people, you're with them for like hour and a half, and you get to be a little part of changing their life. The river I work on, it's great. It's class 3, class 4 river. So it's some pretty decent rapids, but it's like I go out and kayak across the country or hike across the country. I can get down that river, but I get to take people who, it's like you and Ash and the kids come up, and it's maybe you've never done anything like that. And I get to be one that helps you experience it. And I've got an hour and a half to get you to trust me with your life, pretty much, and show you time. And then hopefully, it's like, well, we're from Florida. We've never been rafting, but we really enjoyed this because that guy Andy helped it. And it's like, we get people of all sorts of ages and stuff that never been rafting, and this could be the craziest thing they ever do in their life. And it's like, I'm the one who got to do that with them, and it's hopefully that gives them, they go on in their life, and it's like, oh, I don't know if I can, make this, maybe not this extreme, but make this career change. And someone's like, well, you went rafting. You didn't think you'd go rafting, Yeah. And every so often I get to tell people, my story in the boat. And it's like, tell people that, I used to work in the corporate world, but I'd rather do this and live in a van down by the river, in a little shed, but it's what I enjoy, and it's what makes me happy. And for me, being happy and enjoying life is what it's all about.
I guess now, since you somewhat tapped into telling your story, and I mean, you've been on here doing it for me, can you talk somewhat, I guess, about not only working, doing the whitewater rafting gig, but you're also getting out doing public speaking. You were trying to get out before the COVID situation happened, and then that kind of slowed things down. But can you talk about what it is now what you were trying to do before and what you're still trying to deliver with the public speaking role that you're doing?
Yeah. So I did my big trip. It's one that everyone's pretty impressed with it. They're like, wait, you did what? And then when you tell them why, especially with addiction in this country now, alcoholism and addiction, everybody knows somebody that it's affected, whether it's affected yourself personally or you got a parent, a brother, an aunt, an uncle, a best friend, and it's sad that it's getting to the point now where people probably know somebody that's died from it too, and the addiction doesn't only hurt you. It's like, if you had a parent that drank and it, they took it out on you, or you had a loved one or significant other that, it's just rough. So for me, it's like I try to tie the kayak trip or other things, just my experience, in with it. So started doing a couple universities and high school, stuff like that. I'd go and kind of use the kayak trip for younger generations and show them like, hey, this is the cool stuff I've been doing. And it's like, then I compare it to where it's like, you want to get sober for the rest of your life. That's cool, but you can't really do that, because when you try to look that far ahead, that's like me saying in Georgia, oh, I can't even imagine walking to Maine. So it's just kind of taking it step by step. I'm going to try to just not drink today. I'm not going to drink this week. I'm not going to drink this year, this month, and kind of work it that way. Sure. And I use the things that, you probably heard people say, just one day at a time. Mm. That's what I kind of used my kayak trip and put those into place with that, where it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, I got to make it, like crossing the Tampa Bay, it's like, I got to make it to the rod and reel. It's like looking across that thing. I'm like, this is a long way, but if I can make it to that buoy, and then when I get to that buoy, make it to the next buoy, and kind of work. Sometimes in addiction, you have to take it 1 minute at a time. Other times you got to take it, a day at a time or whatever. And that's my thing. And it's more when I'm talking to younger generation, like college kids, I'm not telling them, hey, don't party, because if I was in college, if you told me not to party, I'd be like, oh, okay, thanks. And then I'd be at the bar that night talking about this bozo who told me not to party. Let me show you how to party and, shotgun a beer or something. But it's more just letting them know that my big thing is if you do need help, there is help out there. There's so many people that are willing to help. And if you ask someone for help and they don't help you, ask somebody else. Like, you're not alone. There's people everywhere that'll help you. I mean, it's not just addiction. It's a mental health thing. It's the big thing is just asking for help. And there's help out there. Don't hold it inside. Because when you hold it inside, that's where it's not going to happen. And you're never alone. There's always somebody, I think I'm a terrible person. I've got all these arrest charges and did these bad things. And you talk to someone else, and I guarantee there's people out there that have done twice as worse stuff as you, and they've come out okay.
Yeah.
That's just the kind of message I try to convey to people.
No, that's awesome, dude. I mean, that's so cool that you get out there and you do the public speaking. I know that you got a great story. Whenever I first started this show, the wifey and I, we discuss everything. And that with me and her, we've always been that way since the beginning. We always talked about everything that we're going to do. And when I started talking about this show, just in particular, the business itself, and talking about what I was going to do, and I was going to have people on, and I was going to interview people, that you were one of the first people that ever came to mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, Ashley talks about it, and she'll talk about it even after I get out of here. And you're like, and she'll tell me, she was like, listen, that was a good show. He's got a great story. He's such a good talker. Because you and I have always had that bond. She's had that bond with you. And we always knew that, your story need to be told from the beginning, through the trail, all the way through the kayak trip, what it stood for, what you're doing now. You talked about the fact that, you're doing the whitewater rafting, guiding, and now you're public speaking. Can you talk about, I guess, the young lady that you just met that recently now you just got engaged to, and when she came into your life and how that changed your life as well?
Yeah. So I finished that kayak trip, and kind of similar to when I was finished the Appalachian Trail, it's like, what's next, And for me, I was like, all right, what am I going to do? So I decided I wanted to be a raft guide. So I hadn't worked in like a year and a half almost. I blew through that whole severance package, everything like that. And I'm like, all right, here's what I want to do. I want to be a raft guide. So I went and did the company I work for. They have a guide school where you can go and learn how to be a raft guide. And I talked to one of my buddies. I was like, do I need to do that since I already know how to do it? And he's like, it wouldn't be a bad refresher. So I did that for like 5 days. Then I had a day or two off, and I went and did a 9-day wilderness first responder course. Did that and came back, and I went to Mexico for Cinco de Mayo for some of my friends' wedding. They had me officiate their wedding down there, and I'm like, oh, Cinco de Mayo, Mexico, and I'm sober. That was a fun and interesting one, but it was cool to be a part of that. And then got back, did some more training, and I started this new job. And then I had another wedding up in Ohio with one of my good friends that I went up there for that. I was just trying to get my life going back and doing stuff. And I was at that wedding and ran into her there, and we were just kind of talking a little bit. I was in no position to get into a relationship, I was leaving literally at like 7 a.m. the day after. And we were sitting outside talking, and then she took my phone and put her number in it and was like, call me. And I was like, all right. And who knows if I would have called, because I guess what we found out now is I don't know when people are hitting on me, but I guess we'll figure it out. But no, so we, and she's like, I need to see you before. And I was like, well, I was going to call you. So we ended up meeting up, and we just sat and talked for a long time the next day. And then I went to Tennessee, and it was one of those, we knew there was something going on. So we did the long distance for a while, came back to Ohio for the winter, and then went back and did the rafting. And then she came down and started working at the rafting company. She shoots photos for us along with Sam, who keeps popping up there. But
okay, cool.
but yeah, she's one of the photographers, you know, so it's like she's not got in the boat, but she's out there climbing up and down, shooting the photos, which I think is a lot harder than guiding the boat.
Right.
It's a real simple relationship, you know. It's one that, you know, I wasn't looking for anything, and it kind of just popped up, and the long distance thing where we actually got to talk a lot before. And then, but yeah, so we live in a tiny shed together in the season. And then, you know, we went out and worked at a ski resort out in Idaho, and then back down doing rafting. We're bouncing all around, but it's like you find someone who you can spend time with and you don't get tired of them, you know. And she supports me. I know when we first met and we were talking, I was like, well, I'm kind of done doing these big trips and stuff. And she's like, why? She's like, that's who you are. Where other relationships I've had, it's like you need to not necessarily grow up, but like do these things. And it's like, it's someone, you know, you find someone who pushes you to be a better version of you rather than trying to change to be who they want you to be. So yeah, we just got engaged 2-3 weeks ago or so. We're out traveling around out in the Outer Banks.
Awesome.
So I had to ask her like 4 times. She thought I was joking. Supposedly I tie my shoe a lot and fake like I'm on a knee. I don't believe that, but you know, but yeah, so it's one that she's it's the perfect girl for me. So we can work together well. We complement each other, and so kind of what we want to do, works out well for us.
That's awesome, man. So proud of you, dude. So proud that you're able to find that, and, you know, and you know, I'm glad she makes you happy, dude. And that's the time when it happens. People don't realize that, and when they're out looking, you don't find it. When you're not looking, that's when it just happens, and it's such an awesome thing that you were able to do that. So happy for you that, you know, that you got engaged. You know, I sent you a message right away as soon as we found out, and I think Ash did the same, congratulating you on it.
Hallelujah, finally, all the way from Florida.
Right, we were so happy. We were like, dude, our boys are engaged. I can't wait. Like, I can't wait to go to that wedding, bro. You know, we're coming. I had a friend pop in, one of my friends from home. He's popping his T-bib. He's saying, Andy, love your story. The accomplishments you have made on your life journey is amazing. That's true, babe. Appreciate you, dude. Appreciate you for popping in and leaving a message. Yeah, you know, super excited for you. I guess if you want to somewhat, you've talked about all the stories, you know, you talk about the fiance. If you want to talk about your background now, if you don't mind, and kind of give us maybe I don't know if you can really give us a little tour of what it is that you've done, but what it is that you have made available to yourself to be able to travel and live the life that you have right now.
Yeah, so I'm in my van right now. It's kind of hard to see, but yeah, it's a ProMaster conversion van, or it's a big van. Can't really get. I had to throw all my other stuff. I want to show you the front side because it's pretty messy right now. I had to throw everything up there and make it look cool behind me. But no, it's a 2019 Ram ProMaster. It's a giant, one of the big white vans, like the Amazon vans. But we converted it all out, you know, paneled it up, put tongue and groove on the side bed. But it's nice because we can travel all over the country. So basically, like I said, we got a little shed. We call them tiny houses or bungalows that we live in Florida, but they're just the sheds out in front of Home Depot, or living down in Tennessee. But this is our home, pretty much home away from home. So when we're between jobs, seasonal, we would travel around in this for a month or two. We've been to 24 states right now, 25 states in the past year since we've built it out, and we're getting ready to we're heading down end of this month to Austin, Texas. And we're going to run a Christmas tree lot down there. So you're in Austin, hit me up, Papa Noel's.
I was just in Austin too. we went out there over the summer for a baseball tournament out in Rockridge, out there right outside of Austin there.
That's where Dell's at up there. But yeah, no, so it's great. It's one that, like, you know, we have these different jobs where we both enjoy working hard. You know, we live this kind of hippie lifestyle. I consider us hippies, but not dirty hippies, because we like to shower, you know, and we also both like to work. So we work hard for long period of time. Like once we start doing that, Christmas trees will work for 6 weeks straight, 24 hours a day living on site. And then that'll give us some money that'll be able to carry us for a month or so till we get back up to Ohio for a couple more months. But yeah, the van is awesome. I mean, it's one of those that you see them all over, hashtag van life stuff going on. And it's fun. It's like, it gets interesting sometimes when you're in cramped space. But like I said, I found the perfect person I can live in a van with and don't get tired of each other. So it works out well for us. But yeah, we'll crank out a couple more states here. So we'll get head down and we'll end up getting like West Virginia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana before we get back to Texas. Florida, we're in the top corner of Florida as well. So, but
awesome.
It's a different lifestyle, but it's a fun thing. It's just getting to have that freedom to go wherever you want.
No, that's so cool. And I know I've seen so many people starting to reinvent using vans and buses and all that kind of stuff and making it into, somewhere you can drive around and kind of just settle up wherever you're at and work and do the things like what you're doing. And that's so cool that you're doing that. That's such an awesome story that you have and that you were able to, continue it on, I guess, because I don't know how much you want to get into what your future plans are. Because I know you and I had talked the other night and we were talking about, what the eventual plan is on what you try to do with, getting some land and trying to get your own thing going. Do you want to elaborate into that, or is that for, maybe a part two in the future?
So the plan is, sure, there's a lot of people sitting there watching this, like, man, I wish I could do that. Like, go live in a rafting outpost or, live in a van, travel around and stuff like that. And that's what, for us, we want to get a piece of property and put some tiny houses on it and rent them out and stuff. And it's like, there's a lot of people out there that want to live this lifestyle that we live, but they don't want to do it for a long period of time. They like having their big flat screen TV and their, fridge, right? Their full-size fridge they can get anything out of. And we want to kind of create a little small space that'll, with little tiny houses, have an old school bus that we convert and have like neat little Airbnbs that people can live in. And that's pretty much what we want to do and give people a taste of our lifestyle, whether it be for a night or a week or whatever you want to do, but something in the Smoky Mountains where you can come down there and get and for me, it's healthy. I think it's healthy because you get away, you can put that phone down for a little while or you can just relax, and it's one of those, you get out and you're out in nature. The stars down there are awesome if you can see them, and it's one of those you can step away from everything and it kind of just, that stress drops away. I know for us, whenever we get into like cities and stuff like that, our stress level just starts going up, and
anxiety. I know. I get you.
Yeah. Like, you sitting in traffic, down there, it's like there might be a bear crossing the road or, the worst traffic we get is somebody with Florida plates in Tennessee that's like looking at all the mountains.
Sure.
Like, being in Florida, it's like you get the people driving slow from out of state and anywhere you are, but it's like, it's just a simple lifestyle. And for us, that's what we like to keep it, real simple, and being able to offer that to people. It's one that we want to do. And it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And I found someone else who wants to do it. I remember when we were down in Florida, we were always talking about that small little resort we could get going. It's like, It's something that's been in my mind for a long time that I've wanted to do. And it's starting to get there. It's like that kayak trip I wanted to do. And that finally got there and I wanted to do it and I got there. It's the same thing with this van. I'd wanted this van for a long time and I, started saving and, doing research and everything. And I finally got it. And it's always, I think it's good for me to always have that goal of something to get,
Yeah.
So it's
awesome because I tell you what, we talked about it back in the day about how when we were young professionals, we all knew that we had something to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And you were big on the recreation and just the hospitality side of it as a whole. I was big in food and beverage, and Ashley was big in the hotel side of things. And, now you have, some more addition to it, as to what it is that you guys are able to offer and to everything. And what you're going to deliver to people is so cool to be able to get off the grid, go somewhere and just hang out where, like he said, for either a night or a week or, a month, whatever you decide to do. If you just want to get off the grid for a minute and kick back, you're going to be able to deliver that for them. And that's such a cool idea. So happy for you that you've been able to do that. Kind of where I want to go now is I wanted to have you, I guess, kind of speak on yourself, the foundation. Like I said before I started getting into this part of it, where they can find you with the River Weasel and your kayak trip, how they can find you on the Appalachian Trail journey entry. Like, if you don't mind, I'm going to put you solo screen, let you kind of rip and roar and kind of tell about that. I do have some of the websites above you, if you'll be able to see when I put you solo screen, to where you can kind of talk about. Yeah, like you don't have to point at them, but they will be there above you, like Seraphim Foundation, River Weasel, all that. Like, I know that the trail will be above you, and just kind of shout that out if you don't mind, and tell people where they can find you and follow you for the future.
All right. Yeah. So the big one, the Seraph Foundation, there's the website that has all the information on what we're doing. It's got links. If you need help, there's also stuff on there that can help do contact information. My contact information's on there. And then there's the River Weasel, or it's just riverweasel.com. That's my, I don't say alter ego. It's my trail name I got on the Appalachian Trail, and kind of what a little alter ego I guess I go by. But riverweasel.com there's a link to all my kayak trip information. So it has journals on there, kept like a daily journal on there, so you can kind of see the day-to-day stuff. There's a map on there that'll show you where the exact trip was. And then the other one is the trail journals link that's up there. That's a day-to-day journal of the Appalachian Trail. If you're trying to find me, probably the best way to follow with what I'm doing is on Instagram. So it's river_weasel. So that's probably the best spot to find me. That's where I post stuff. Terrible about posting to Facebook. I should probably get better at that. But yeah, so there's all sorts of information, a lot of journals on there, but also links. If you need to get a hold of me, it's got email, or just message me on social media. You can find me there as well. But
yeah, no, I appreciate you, dude. I'm so happy that you were able to come on and tell the story today. What I do at the ending point after kind of the story's kind of to its end for now, it's not like, with all my guests, their stories continue as my show continues. I'll continue to bring you back on and kind of continue to tell your story of where you're at now, what you're doing, you know what I mean? And we'll have some future bits as to what it is Andy's up to, so people can always keep their eye on it, because I know I'm going to get hit up about this show like crazy. People have been watching the show to its entirety, and I'm sure a lot of people have been entertained with your story. So I'm going to get a lot of questions following this show as to what it is you're doing. So I'll definitely stay in contact with you. Try to get you back on here, within the next couple of months, where you can give an update as to what it is you're doing. And, but at this time, I kind of do a little bit of the show that I call Pick Your Poison. Okay. And with that, I do like 3 different questions for you, all pertaining to you and to what your likes are. It's an either or question. You kind of pick the either or the or, and then elaborate a little bit about what it is that you feel kind of more, more towards, and why you do. Okay. My first question for you is, would you rather be indoors or outdoors?
It depends. I'm gonna say outdoors, but sometimes it's just nice being inside. That's one thing I have learned about my big trips. Doing these long trips where it's like you're outside all day. Like when I saw you down in Florida, you saw how rough my skin was from the sun beating down, or like when we lived in Florida working on the beach all day. It makes you appreciate things more. It makes you appreciate a roof over your head. I would say outdoors the answer. But I value the indoor a lot. It's like I appreciate one of the biggest things I guess appreciates the word is air conditioning. If you don't have air, like a lot of people just take it for granted, but for me, it's like if I'm in outside all day, especially like on the river, and I get to come inside and some air conditioning, that's just I value it. Air conditioning and inspiration are two things I really appreciate. But
I guess my next question for you would be, if you had to choose, and I know that it's two totally different situations on why you made the two trips, but if you had to choose between the Appalachian Trail or your kayak trip, which do you prefer?
Neither. That's a long way. No. I can't even answer that one. Oh man, do I have to answer it?
No.
Okay, so I can't answer it. Why? They're two completely different things. No. They were at two different times in my life. I would say maybe the kayak trip because I could carry so much more stuff and it wasn't so physically demanding on my body. I mean, it was a lot of work and stuff, but the Appalachian Trail was a lot of pounding on my feet, like busted my arch down. I gained like half a foot size because that arch just, pounded for
foot flattened out.
But they were both, they're both just awesome things that the time in my life, it's what I needed,
Sure.
And it's one that, but yeah, which one I like better? They're just two different things for me. If you ask if I would ever do either one of them again, I would say no, because there's other things I'd rather do.
Yeah, no, that's cool. No, and I do that. I do that with the questions just to kind of see. But there's no right or wrong answer to it. You don't have to say which you do prefer more or the other, because I know that they both played special parts in your life.
Which kid do you like?
Exactly. Like, I would never choose that. Like, that's the truth. I guess my last thing would be for you is, do you prefer working in kind of corporate society? I mean, I know that you're still doing the whitewater rafting thing, which is still part of maybe not a corporate world, but it's still working for somebody else's business. Or would you rather prefer possibly working for yourself one day?
I think I'd rather work for myself, but I haven't really worked for myself too much. So some people who work for themselves hate it.
Sure.
I think it would go back to kind of that wrestling thing, where it's like, if I succeed, I succeed. If I don't, I don't. I work hard. I feel like I work really hard all the time. So it's one doing it for myself. So I think I'd probably rather work for myself. That's eventually what I'd like to get to. I'd almost like to be able to offer my services to a lot of different things. And that would just be, it's kind of working for yourself, but not being tied down to something.
Yeah.
I would definitely say probably myself. It's
not have it consume your life.
Yeah. I don't, that's where I don't want to get back to, where I'm working all the time. Sure. And that becomes like the main identity of me.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No,
definitely. Identity that I'm a raft guide, that I'm, doing these things, like that's a fun part of the identity, but like, it's like, oh, Tony, he's a banker, or something. It's like not what I want to avoid. It's like, I don't want to sell out for I don't want to sell out for money. I want to sell out for happiness is what I always say.
That's awesome, dude. No, man, you got a super great story, dude. Like I said, I've appreciated you coming on for It's been an hour 45, man. We've been on almost 2 hours, dude.
It's the longest show.
It's close. It's close. I don't know the exact of all of them, but yeah, this is close for sure.
All right.
Yeah, dude, but so happy that you were able to come on. And like I said, people, this story is going to continue. And I'm going to have him on many more times to come. Super excited, like I said, that he was able to come on and be part of the show tonight. I was lucky enough to catch him on some free time. He just got engaged. Super excited for him. Can't wait, for what it is that this guy has coming in the future, man.
Yep. Well, you'll be the first to know one of them. Got to let the missus know first,
I hope so.
It's like you and Ash have your relationship's a good foundation. It's something that I got to see, like the way my parents' relationship, your guys. There's a lot of strong role models for me that will help me in that department. So I appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate you, dude. Like I said, you're always a part of this family, man. The wifey loves you. Our kids haven't even met you yet, but they've heard so many stories about old Uncle Andy. They can't wait, and you let me know when you guys come down. I know you're talking about trying to come down soon, so we can all get together and sit around and eat and laugh and tell stories. And
keep me a spot in your driveway to park the van.
Oh yeah, for sure. You know what's up? I'll put you right next to the basketball hoop right in the yard. Yeah, we're good to go.
I got a top deck now, so we get up there and do some dunks.
Jumping, doing that dude perfect stuff, flying over the top. Oh man, I appreciate you, Andy. Like I said, coming out telling the story, doing what you do. We'll definitely see you again. You and I talked about what the future holds for you, and I'm excited to watch it, man.
Yep. So,
all right, buddy.
So much
Go ahead.
So much more to be written,
Oh yeah, and I look forward to it. What I do now is I'm gonna drop you backstage, kind of do my outro and do my final quote of the night, and then I'll end the show, and then you and I can chat right here after. Okay.
All right, sounds good, man.
All right, big guy. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you.
Take care. Yeah, everyone. That was Andy Gallatin. Super excited, man. Super happy that guy was able to come on and be a part of the show tonight. Like I said, he and I have been rolling for just almost a little bit over an hour and 45 minutes. Excited that I was able to do that with him. I know it's 10 o'clock now for most of you guys on the East Coast, but hey, hope you were entertained with the show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Andy has a great story. He talked about how he did his trip through the Appalachian, at a young age before he decided to get into corporate business life, and then had his run throughout that era too. You know what I mean? And then made some mistakes. Figured out that he needed to get some help. He did get that help, and afterwards decided to get a nonprofit organization going and do that so that he was able to help raise some money for some people that were in similar situations as himself and be able to help fund them because of the fact that he ran into a problem throughout the rehab stage that could have broken him, and he didn't let it break him. And luckily he was able to have some family that were able to back him at that time. And he's looking to try to be that for other people in return, is to be that family that you can turn to, and they can help support you get through these situations that sometimes we all need help for. And he's a great spokesperson and a great role model as to how to do it and some of the things that you can do as well to try to get yourself through it. And maybe some of the things he doesn't work for you, but he's one of those guys that's out there trying to help you figure out what it is that does work for you. So truly appreciate him. Wanted to give a final quote of the night, and then I'm going to get out of here. My final quote of the night is, today is a great day to be amazing. Remember that. When you go through hard times and things get rough for you, you can always look at the fact that today is your day to be amazing. So with that being said, the business. Let's be real. Episode 39. Over